Hello, I'm a 48-year-old ex-housewife who's now living in an undisclosed location for fear of my safety. The story I'm about to tell, it is so unbelievable, I wouldn't blame the entire world for believing that it's fabricated. Hell, I wish I could forget it myself. There are a lot of women who have found out that their man was on a DL under horrific circumstances. I can honestly say that despite all the TikTok videos I've watched, the reels I've watched, I was completely blindsided in my own situation. My husband was the perfect lover. There were no signs that he was on the DL. He got along with gay people, he got along with everybody. He was just a wonderful person. My story starts with I had the perfect life, or so I thought. I was a beautiful woman and I was a well kept woman. My husband had old school values. He did not want me to work. So my place was at home. I was a happy homemaker. I went to the gym. I ate right. I kept myself up. And in return and in exchange, I got a wonderful husband who truly doted on me. He loved having me as his arm piece. The love making was superb. No complaints. And I just felt like I had the perfect life. There are some people who feel like you cannot have heaven on earth. Prior to this horrific incident that I suffered, I didn't feel that way. I truly felt like I had heaven on earth. I had the perfect life. My perfect life was only going to get better because recently my husband had learned he was up for a promotion. He went for the promotion and he was actually granted the promotion. This promotion meant my husband no longer had to travel anymore. My husband had to travel because, again, he worked for the city, he worked with government contracts, and it required him to travel a lot. Now, it did not bother me that my husband had to travel a lot because, as I said, my husband was very attentive. He called me all the time, and when he was home, he doted on me. The lovemaking was phenomenal. So it didn't bother me that he traveled a lot, but it was a plus that he had got this promotion and he would no longer have to travel. So I just knew where life was already heaven for me, it was only going to get better. The first sign of trouble was the week my husband started his promotion. I noticed that he was a lot more anxious and a lot more, he just seemed antsy, like, something was bothering him. And this was not my husband. My husband was very mild-mannered. He was very laid back, and this just was out of character for him. So finally, I sat my husband down and I said, "Hey, baby, spill it. What's going on? Is this new position stressing you out? This is out of character for you. You haven't been yourself." My husband would confess to me that he fathered a child. He had, got a woman pregnant right before we met and got married. And, he had took care of the child behind my back. He didn't know how I would feel about the child. So, he paid child support and had a relationship with this child behind my back. You could have knocked me over with a feather. I could not believe that my husband had kept a secret this great from me. I did not like it. I felt betrayed, but, so I asked my husband, "Why are you telling me now?" Well, apparently the child's mother, the son's mother, had passed away and the son needed to come live with us. So again, I felt like, all good things come to an end at some point. I could not believe that, my world was turning upside down this fast. Upon meeting his son the next week when he finally moved in with us, my anger was short-lived. He was a wonderful young man. I could understand why my husband would, lie and keep this from me because, women have been known to break things off or not even entertain a man that fathers a newborn baby, so I eventually, the block that I had put up was slowly starting to fade. The young man took after his father, again, very mild-mannered, intelligent, polite, respectable. So it wasn't long before I truly started to embrace him as my stepson. He was the perfect son to have, if by all accounts. Well, one night, shortly after my stepson had moved in and had got settled, I noticed that my husband was not in bed. This did not alarm me immediately because my husband was known to get up and run to the office if he realized he forgot his laptop or some important documents. So, seeing as how my husband was not in bed and I was kind of stirred awake, I decided to just get up and check the house out as I normally do. I always do that as a habit of mine. I was started to get alarmed when I walked past my stepson's bedroom and I noticed that he wasn't in the bedroom. Now it's 1 o'clock in the morning, so my husband and my stepson was gone. What could go wrong? You know, what's going on? I called my husband's cell phone repeatedly. He would not pick up the phone. So I decided to just make my way downstairs, get me some water, and calm my nerves, not think too much of it. But as I go downstairs and I'm drinking water, I hear noises coming from the basements, some strange sounds. When I go down in the basement, it was a finished basement apartment that we had set up. When I go down in the basement, I got the shock of my life. My husband was on top of his son and they were having full-blown intercourse. I could have fainted. I could have passed out. I could not believe what was happening right in front of me in our own marital home. My husband having incest with his own 17-year-old son. What type of nightmare was this? Something told me, because I saw videos, I've heard stories of women finding out their husband was DL and them being unalived. So something told me to not let my presence be known. I crept back up the stairs without my husband seeing me, but I felt like my entire world was shattered. Who was this man? Over the next couple of weeks, I was scared shitless. And what was so bad, you all, was I started to notice that my husband would disappear from our bed around 1, 2 o'clock in the morning quite often, and I already knew what he was doing. I decided that I could not let this go unnoticed for too longer. I had to report my husband for what he was doing. So I went to a few stores, I made a few purchases, and I decided to have a hidden camera installed in the basement where they would have their rendezvous. So once I had this hidden camera installed in the basement or whatever, and they had a few more trysts after I had the camera installed, I decided I had had enough to take this footage to the police and report my husband for neglect, SA, of a minor. I took this footage to the police station. They interviewed me. I told them everything I knew. I told them how I found out and, what was happening behind closed doors. And I patiently awaited, for them to finally come to the home and arrest my husband. Only 2 days after taking this footage to the police station, we were all sitting at home, me, my husband, and my stepson. We were sitting at home, and again, I'm trying my best. It had been very hard over the last month to put on this game face and pretend like I had no idea what was happening. Well, I was so relieved when I finally heard a pounding at the front door because I knew it was the police. So I sat back with a smirk on my face when my husband went to open the door for the police because I knew that they were going to arrest him, and it was going to bring me so much satisfaction, so much joy to see him get justice done for me. Well, you could have knocked me over with a feather once again when the police barged past him and put the handcuffs on me. They took me to jail for filing a false police report. Now you may ask, how was it false charges when you had video proof of what your husband was doing to his own son? Get this. I would later find out that this was not his son. This was a 23-year-old young man that he had met on one of his trips over to another state and had fallen in love with this man, and they had started carrying an affair a couple of years ago, and he decided to move this young man in because the young man looked very young for his age under the guise of this was his son from from a previous relationship. So, as I said, my husband, he's a city worker. He works with government contracts. He knows very powerful people. I was threatened that if I ever spoke on this situation, he would pursue charges and make my life a living hell. And I knew that he had the power and he had the contacts to do so. Needless to say, I got my things out of the house as discreetly as I could. I moved states away. I have changed my name, and even though I've moved states away and I've changed my name, I still sleep with one eye open. I have nightmares. I, imagine my husband kicking my door in and unaliving me because of the knowledge I have of what he did. So I tell my story just to empower women and just tell women to be careful. Sometimes, there are no signs that your husband is on the DL. And, even though that situation happened 3 years ago, I live with this nightmare. To the young lady who emailed and told me this story, Thank you. I will not disclose your location, obviously, for your safety, but, thank you for telling the story.